David writes in the 34th chapter of the book of Psalm, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make its boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear of it and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and delivered me from all my fears. And they looked to him and were radiant, and their faces were not ashamed. But this poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps all around those who fear him and delivers them. And then I want you to see the invitation that David gives each of us in verse number 8. It's the theme for this morning. And he says, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. And blessed is the man who trusts in him. Thank you very much. You may be seated. As we prepare for this morning, I want to say a couple of things to you. First of all, I want us to take heed of what David is inviting us to do. He uses the exclamatory word, oh, and then there's a pause, and then he says, I want you to do this. I want you to taste and see that the Lord is good. You see, everything that's been going on in David's life up to this point, the Lord has been good to him. Everything that's been going on in David's life up to this point, the Lord has been gracious to him. The Lord has protected him from his enemies. The Lord has protected him when he hid in caves. The Lord has been by his side and not left him forsaken. It was David who said, I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. But we come to this verse today, and he says this. He says, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. You know what David's saying? David is simply saying this. If you don't believe what I've said about God's goodness, if you don't believe that what I've said about his goodness is true, then taste it for yourself and then make a statement. When I was growing up in Sulphur Springs, we were blessed to have something called Furr's Cafeteria. Now, I'm getting old now, and I know that Furr's are no longer around. I'm getting old now, and a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I was with my son in a truck, and we were in a parking lot. Matter of fact, it was when we were going to North Carolina to deliver the supplies after the storm. And we were in a parking lot, and Dustin and I, both of our eyes perked up and our ears perked up when one of us said, look, there's a Piccadilly's. To which my son said in the back seat, shame on him. What's Piccadilly? Oh, if we would have only had time. Man, we could have taken him in, and you know what we would have done? We'd have went to the front of that line, and we'd all got our tray. We would have got our silverware, and then we would have started down not the conveyor belt, but the rails in front, and we would have watched as everything right there was in front of, behind the glass, and we would have got to pick and choose what we wanted to put on our tray. I can tell you, anybody that's ever been with me to a cafeteria, you know this is what's going to happen. I'm going to walk in, I'm going to get my tray, and nobody could make sweet slaw like Furr's Cafeteria. But the first thing I do, they said, do you care for a salad? I sure would. I'd like a heaping bowl of that sweet slaw. Then I go on down. They said, what would you like for your meat? I'd like a piece of that fried fish. And then they went from one big piece to two smaller pieces. And the good thing about Furr's Cafeteria, it became all you could eat. That was even better. But then I would get my meat and I would go down and they said, what would you like for your sides? I would like a bowl of fried okra and I'd like a bowl of macaroni and cheese. Oh yeah, y'all can tell it's healthy. Then you get to the bread. Is there any bread? I'd like a piece of that Texas toast. Then you get to dessert, and you could pick between the chocolate pie or the pecan pie or any kind of pie you wanted. And then you got to the drink station. You got your drink. Then they rang you up. I can remember when Furr's Cafeteria was $6.95. Now I think it's $62.95. And then you'd go sit down and you'd start to eat. Whenever you'd start to eat, everything got quiet. Why? Because you were tasting and you were seeing that it was good. But yet it was while I was sitting there that I would notice across the table my mom, my dad, my sister, they would all have plates that would have different foods on them. To which we would inquire, why did you get that? Oh, because it's good. You want to try a bite? No. Why? Because I don't like it. How do you know you don't like it? I just know I won't like it. Have you ever tried it? No. Then how do you know you wouldn't like it? Well, I just know. You see, that's what a lot of people think about God. They've never tried God, and they don't see God for being good. They see God as being not good, and so they don't want any part of it. And I am convicted that I believe a lot of people won't try God because they're afraid they might just like Him. And I'm afraid that they think that if they like Him, then their life's going to have to change. And let me tell you something. When God gets a hold of your life, you don't have to worry about your life changing because God will take care of the life change that needs to happen. But this morning, what we're about to do is one of my favorite services of the year. I've invited 3 groups of people to come and share with us this morning. Their names are in alphabetical order on the screens, and it does not matter to me which order they come in as long as they all come. That's all that matters. But here's what we're going to find. That this morning you're probably going to hear testimony of the goodness of God during the good times. Why? Because we taste and we see that we all like the goodness of God in good times. And so we all want that. And so we see the significance of that. And so it's not that easy to give God praise when everything's going well. But there's no doubt you're also going to hear of people who get up here and this year they've experienced something that's not on your plate. Because it wasn't good. But yet through that and that experience, even though the experience was not good, now they're starting to see a little bit of the goodness of God through it. You see, this morning before they come, I want to ask you a question. And I want you to ask yourself this question throughout the course of this service. Have you ever sat down at the table and tasted of the goodness of God? And if not, then do me a favor. Don't tell me that God's not good if you've never tasted Him. Because you know why I like chocolate pie so much? Because I had a piece. You know why I like pecan pie so much? Because I tried it and I tasted and I saw that it was good. You know why I don't like guacamole? Because I just know I won't like it. And to this day, I've never put guacamole in my mouth, to my knowledge. Now I have to try it. No, I don't. You can just go right there. That door says exit. You can go, And probably so, because the other day we were talking about what we needed for the grocery list, and I've always said I won't eat cream cheese. Now, if I don't know cream cheese is in something, I'll eat it, and it's the greatest thing. But if I see cream cheese and no way, no how. Sour cream, just looks nasty. But yet, 2 years ago, I got a macaroni and cheese recipe. And you know what it calls for? You got it. And you know what I did? I said, no, I don't want to, but it's what made it good. And I tried it before and put it in. And then my kids love it. And Gina loves it. And then the other day, Tucker takes a lot after me. And when I said, Gina, this is what we need, he said, well, why do you need cream cheese? Oh, let me guess. That goes in the macaroni and cheese. And y'all just didn't tell me. Yes, it does. And yes, it did. And you loved it. And you know why you loved it? Because you tasted and you saw that it was good. Now he's saying, I'm not going to eat it. Do what? Nobody asked you to talk. You and Casey, can you take Tucker on your way out, and both of y'all can just go. And so Here's the deal. This morning, no matter what you're going through, no matter where you've been, no matter what you're facing, taste and see that the Lord is good. And so this morning, I invite your attention to the screen, and if we can pull up that title slide, please. And folks, if you want to come up this morning in any particular order, you can. And so we've got Crystal Clark, McKenna Hancock, and Kyle and Ashley Williams. And so whichever one of you wants to draw the short straw, I tell you what, let's do. Since y'all are going to be this way, why don't y'all all come up here and sit on the front row right now? Just y'all just come on down. Just come on, and we'll make it easy for you. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. Oh, yeah, look at this. And so, Crystal, since you're coming from that direction, you just want to come on up. And all right, come right on up. And they're going to be up here this morning. And so give them your undivided attention. And just so you know, there's not a one of these things that's scripted. I have no earthly idea what's fixing to be said. But I do know this, God will put it all together. And so, Crystal, thank you so much.
Morning. Bear with me. There'll probably be a lot of tears, and I'm not really a public speaker, and that's a lot of eyes out there. When I first read Pastor Bruce's message on Friday asking me to share today, my first thought was absolutely not. Reluctantly, I agreed, and then I laid in my bed and cried for 30 minutes, and I texted Anna Werner and Kristen Hill, told them what I got myself into. Saturday afternoon, I sat down to write this out, and I was convinced that I could not do it. I was trying to think of a way to back out. That's when my phone lit up with a text message from Bruce, giving me a few words of encouragement and letting me know that he was praying for me. The amount of hesitation and lies the enemy was throwing at me is exactly why I knew I needed to stick with my yes. The devil doesn't want me to stand up here and speak of the goodness in my life, the goodness of God in my life this last year and a half. For me, the goodness of God has come in the form of healing and letting go of trauma. To understand how far God has brought me, I first need you to understand where I was. My story has a lot of layers to it. I grew up surrounded by toxic people. My father was an abusive alcoholic. My dad would drink too much, beat my mom up, and he would finally either pass out or the police would show up. We'd be given 5 minutes to get what we could, throw it in a bag, and leave. Eventually, we would end up going back, and the cycle would start again in a couple of weeks, if we were lucky, maybe a few months. Each time we left, we always went to the Dallas area to live with my grandma or my aunt. My aunt was in a similar situation. Her first husband had molested their children and was in prison. She was remarried to a drug addict and was stuck in the same cycle of leave and go back that my mom was. The last time my mom and aunt lived together, one of my uncles had been staying with us too, and he liked to touch me and my cousin. She and I slept on bunk beds, and we would sleep on the top bunk together with our arms wrapped around each other, so if he came in, we could fight him off together. When we finally had the courage to tell someone, our grandma didn't believe us. There was a big fight between my mom and aunt and grandma. My mom took me, my little brother, and we went back home to our dad. My mom blamed me for returning to my dad. This went on for 10 years. There were many times during those years I did not think we would make it out alive. Fast forward a few years, and I hit high school. A friend of mine invited me to church. I became active in her youth group, spending many of my weekends cleaning gardens or making sandwiches, handing them out of our church van to homeless people around the Houston area. My first summer at church camp, my freshman year, I truly asked God to come into my life and lead me. I was baptized that summer in a swimming pool at Tanglewood Christian Camp. I remember vividly coming out of that water feeling like I was truly a new person. My pastor and I went to call my mom to tell her the good news. She was angry with me for calling so late, and it was 6:30 in the evening. At the time, my stepfather was an atheist. I remained active in church the next few years despite being ridiculed at home and told that what I was doing was stupid or silly, and nothing I did would ever change who I was. I was completely unlovable and worthless. Eventually, those words soaked in, and I fell away from the church. I graduated high school in 2004, and in April 2005, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he died 24 days later. We had never had a chance to truly make amends. The following year, I was sexually assaulted and found myself a young single mother. I met my husband Corbett when Brianna was 2. He took Brianna and I head on and never looked back. At this time, I was 22. I was so broken that when I finally had a healthy relationship, I thought he was fake. I was constantly on my toes, waiting for him to show me who he truly was. At one point, I told him he was a great guy, but not my great guy. Thankfully, he's a little stubborn and he did not listen. He's truly been my biggest supporter. The truth is, for the majority of my life, I have been bound by the chains of my past. I carried pain that I couldn't let go of, anxiety, depression. I was angry and stuck in a cycle of self-hate. My daughter was invited to church here by Brady Werner. As a family, we decided to come in together. That morning in the parking lot, I was on the verge of a panic attack. The devil was working overtime on me that morning. We almost went back home. We came inside and we were greeted by Megan and Renee. We truly felt welcomed. Later that morning, Pastor Bruce invited us to come kneel and pray at the altar. Before I truly knew what my feet were doing, I was headed to the altar with my husband right behind me. I fell apart right there on the floor. Brother Chuck Hancock came over to pray. When he asked how he could pray for us, all I could say was, God, please take it. I don't want to carry it anymore. My husband said healing, just pray for healing. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to bring it all to the altar. We started attending church here regularly. A little later, I started meeting with Miss Gina, and together we started working through some of the layers of my past and reprogramming the voice in my head with God's truth about who I am and who He has called me to be. Pastor Bruce said a few weeks back that as Christians, we should say phooey on generational curses. That's exactly what I'm doing. God has given me a loving husband, 4 beautiful children, a wonderful church home, and a group of women that completely support me. They want nothing from me but to be supportive and be my friends. I have found a greater purpose here, serving in the nursery and through Foundations Christian Academy in the 2-year-old classroom. The goodness of God has taken all the pain that I went through and turned it into a beautiful story of redemption. And while I'll never understand why these things happen to me, I do know that those things do not get to define me. If you are in the pits of depression and you can't see a way out, please ask for help. There was a time in my life that I did not want to live anymore, and I prayed to God to please take me from this life. That is not my story anymore. My life is still far from perfect, but I know that whatever is happening, God has a greater purpose for it all. And as I stand before you today, I can proudly say that my stepfather is no longer an atheist.
So last year, or the year before that, Blake actually asked me to do this, and I was like, no. And he asked me multiple times, and I stuck with my no. And then Brother Bruce came to me again, and I was like, no, but I didn't say no. And I thought about it, and I finally said yes, because I feel like this was something that I needed to do. My name is McKenna, and I would like to share a little bit about my testimony and about what God has done and is doing in my life today. And I don't like talking in front of people, so bear with me. To start, I've always gone to church for as long as I can remember. I grew up here. I was saved and baptized when I was in 2nd grade. I knew who Jesus was and what He did for me, but I never grasped the whole idea of it being so young. As I've gotten older, I've enjoyed being in church and learning a lot more, but it wasn't really until Blake and Kennedy came along that I really got into the Word regularly and became eager to learn. I have enjoyed being in church, especially these last 2 years, because ever since like that time that Blake and Kennedy came and I was like introduced more to the word and was like Blake and Kennedy like pressed us to be involved more, that really helped me because I wouldn't do it by myself, but with the force of it, it was easier to be able to do. Up until my sophomore year of high school, I never really faced any major challenges in my life, so I hadn't really struggled or had to have a deep trust in what God was doing in my life. That year I had a major knee surgery and didn't see any good at all in that situation. All I could think of was, why God, why me? Later on I realized I was going to get through it, but I still didn't understand the reason. The next year, one of my friends had the same surgery happen to her, and it immediately hit me. That was my purpose and what happened to me. I was supposed to help her through this trial in her life. That felt like my first major trial that I've dealt with. However, "2024 began, and another situation hit our church and many other people and me. I struggled with trusting God again because what happened again didn't make any sense to me. I doubted God for many months, again just asking why. That doubt was never something that happened to me before, and I felt guilty for doubting, but nothing could make sense to me. I was in the Word, praying, leaning on others, but nothing seemed to help me get over my doubt. Today, I still have questions, and I still struggle every day. Some days are worse than others, but I continue to trust God, because just like there was a reason for my injury, there was a reason for what happened. Even if I can't see it now, I have learned in just the last 2.5 years that when all I can see is the tiny picture, God sees the big picture. He knows what he's doing. Our part is to trust him through everything, even when it's not easy. Even though it's hard, I am learning more and more about how to trust that he is in control of all things. And lastly, 2 verses that I would like to leave you with is John 13:7, and Jesus answered him, What I'm doing now you do not understand, but afterward you will understand. And James 1:2-4 says, Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Thank you.
Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kyle Williams. I am married to my wife, Ashley. It's been 11 years now, and she put that on here to make sure I get that number right. We have a son named Jackson, who's about to be 10 in a few months, and we have our daughter named Lauren. When Brother Bruce reached out to me if I would want to share our testimony, I knew there would be no we involved. It was going to be me. My wife's biggest fear is public speaking, so she is supporting me from afar. I promise I'll talk fast, unlike somebody else we know who just keeps going and going and going. Just kidding. In all seriousness, when we were asked to do this, we were taken back. Bruce told me he was trying to break my telling him no streak. And I immediately thought of that scene in Ferris Bueller with the nerdy kid, and he's like, I'll go. He'll just keep asking. No, we were flattered, but neither of us thought we were ready to share it. As we really thought and prayed on it, we realized once again how this was God telling us we were ready. But before we tell you how grateful we are for what he has done for us this year, we felt led to share where we were at the beginning of last year. As hard as it is to admit, at the beginning of 2023, we were having some serious conversations about separating. We had spent so many years not keeping God in his rightful place in our marriage, within our family. We weren't prioritizing our faith and had our focus on many other things. But it had finally caught up with us. At the end of every conversation we had, we would always agree that this wasn't what we wanted and how we wanted it to end. We were left asking, what do we do? We knew we had to make big changes, so we humbly went with our hearts open to the only one we knew who could help us, and that was God. Throughout the spring and summer months, we saw progress. God was definitely working on us and showing us we needed repairing, adjustment, and what needed to be thrown out altogether. It wasn't easy and it wasn't fun, but we were listening faithfully. Some things were easier to hear than others. One thing that came up was enrolling our daughter in the Foundation's Mother's Day Out program. Hindsight, we thought we were just enrolling her in another Mother's Day Out program, no big deal. God was setting us up for some bigger and better things. For those of you who don't know, they send out newsletters that will post to the group me an invitation of Foundation families to join on Sundays and Wednesday services. We would see these invites, talk about how we really needed a church home and family, but life would pick right back up, and to be honest, we didn't follow through with it. That's when he made sure we heard him very loud and very clearly. On Friday before Christmas, I was informed that they would be doing away with my position at work, and I would have been let go from a job that I had for 8 years. Calling your wife with the news that Friday before Christmas, as our kids would say, 0 out of 10 stars, we do not recommend that. I will never forget what my wife Ashley said. In tears and in not convincing, but still trusting tone, she said, "It's okay, God has a plan." The icing on the cake was that our son was set to have major surgery he desperately needed on January 2nd, and our medical benefits went out on December 31st. That period of time was the best, worst time for our family, actually. When we say it was an amazing Christmas and New Year, things were extremely simple. We were clinging to each other more so in those few months than we had ever had in years. Sure, there was lingering doubt and uncertainty, but God provided, and we were so grateful. What we thought was a setback turned out to be a blessing. Ashley had a major project going on at work. She was able to pick up extra hours, and she could take care of that financial and support for us. I ate some much-needed humble pie on letting my wife financially provide for our family, and job hunting. There was nothing in my job hunt that compared to what I was doing in the past. But I was able to spend several weeks of quality time with our kids. Jackson's surgery was able to be done, which was a huge blessing because his condition was actually worse than they thought. He was able to have one of us home with him while he was recovering, and that was so huge. I had a new appreciation of what my wife did at home behind the scenes, and now that I know why she called me at 5:01 asking if I was on my way home. But God continued to provide. We were so grateful. I ended up finding a job mid-February, just as Ashley's project was finishing. The desire to find a church home and family had become more and more and more important on us. Neither of us knew where to start. Then one Sunday, Miss Megan had sent out a group me invite on services that morning. That's when we knew God was calling us here. On the following Sunday, March the 10th, we attended our first Sunday service here. Again, we saw what he was doing, and we followed. Several weeks later, and much to Ashley's dismay, we joined as members. And y'all just thought she was crying because she was happy, but that girl was terrified to walk up here. And I'm probably going to need her ride home after this. But as they say, the rest is history. We are in one of the best spots we have ever been in years, for our family is thriving. We are grateful and blessed beyond measure. And for that, I say, to God be the glory. Now, it would be easy for me to end it there, but we both felt like it was important to extend some of the gratitude to you. We thank you for being the hands and feet of Jesus, for making us feel loved and welcome in a time that we truly, truly needed it. The volunteering opportunities that we have been blessed with, and the ones our family are blessed with, the ones that our kids are blessed with the Rejoice, VBS, Awana, and the Foundation programs. The men's and women's Bible studies, Sunday school classes, and the other ministries and work that I failed to mention. Also, Brother Bruce, we thank you for asking us to share our testimony, even though Ashley bailed on me. We pray that God blesses each of you this Thanksgiving as much as he had blessed us. And Miss Gina, if you were here, is she here? Bless you, because you have to deal with him. Thank y'all very much.
Can we sing it again? All my life you have been faithful. I read a quote this morning I want to leave you with today. And then we're going to give you a chance to respond. If you have anything that you just want to come and thank God for, we want you to be able to do that because we feel it's important. You know, as a shepherd, sheep have a tendency to wander. And maybe you've wandered into this pasture today and you just need to thank God for something. Maybe you just need to come and ask God into your life today. We want to give you that opportunity. And so, Stephen, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to come, but I want to give you a quote, and it's a pretty strong quote that I read this morning by Dr. Adrian Rogers, and this is what he said. He said that a Christian with an experience, now listen to this, a Christian with an experience is never at the mercy of an infidel with an argument. There's people that will tell us that God is not good. It's because they haven't experienced the goodness of God. Now, the way you befriend them is not to go out and call them an infidel. But just remember today that if you've had an experience, God wants to use that for our good, but he wants to use it for his glory. Maybe you're here today and you're struggling. I wish I had all the answers in the world. I really do. Nothing is more demeaning to me than people coming in and they say, well, we're coming to you. And I hate it when they say this. We're coming to you because we know you'll have the answer. I have found this to be true and I found this to be okay. I don't always have the answers. But it's in those moments where my trust and my faith is strengthened. And so today I'm not gonna, unbeknownst to Kyle, wherever he went, he probably left. He was embarrassed for what he said about me talking and talking and talking. I don't ever do that. Open your Bibles to, no, I'm just kidding. Today's one of those days where I just need to sit down and shut up and let God move. And so maybe God's speaking to you today and you just need to come and you want to come and pray. I'm going to ask our workers to go ahead and join me right here in the front. But maybe God's speaking and today he just wants you to come. You don't, not to make anything public, but you just have a request that you just need to lay at his feet and you just need to taste and see that the Lord is good.